On this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist, we take a trip to North Carolina. We visit some otters and a bobcat in the North Carolina Nature Center. The Biltmore Estate is America's largest private home, with scenic gardens and views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We explore life in the Davidson River in Brevard, North Carolina. We're on the quest for the largest salamander in North America, the Hellbender. We visit some historic sites, including Andrew Jackson's Hermitage and George Washington's Mount Vernon. It wouldn't be a complete trip without exploring some wetlands. We stop at the famous Duke Gardens and encounter some rare species of ducks. Upon my return to Connecticut, we investigate a beaver habitat and check on some chickadees in their nest. All this and more on this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist. And now, here's your host.
Hello friends, I'm Will Michael and you're watching Connecticut Naturalist. This week, I'm reporting from in front of the Connecticut Naturalist Research Center. I recently returned from a trip to North Carolina and Tennessee. This week, we'll take a look at my expedition. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced the first tape, so we'll take a look at the trip starting from the halfway point.
Our first location is the North Carolina Nature Center. This is a relatively small preserve, but it's also an education center and small zoo. Among my favorite animals were a pair of river otters. Otters are among the most playful and curious mammals in the animal kingdom. In the future, I'll be videotaping otters in the wilds of Connecticut. Not many people know that Connecticut is in fact home to otters. They're one of the beavers' natural predators. Otters are able to swim underneath and into the beaver lodge and capture the beaver young. Another fine specimen is this bobcat. Extremely secretive, the bobcat is difficult to film in the wild. But fortunately for us in Connecticut, we also have these cats in the wild. This is another tough video assignment, but I'm confident we'll get one on film in the near future from our own forests back home. Some kind of insect made a series of holes on this tree. The Duke Gardens were absolutely pristine and perfectly manicured. Located in Durham, North Carolina, on the grounds of Duke University, the flowers, plants, stonework, and trees are absolutely beautiful. One could spend the whole day just sitting by the pond, watching the wildlife and scenery. The pond is home to a variety of unique ducks, including these mandarin ducks. These two are both males. The females are gray and white and may be hiding on a clutch of eggs along the shore. These ducks were imported from Asia and are here for people to view. They are related to the wood duck and are excellent flyers. Notice the orange crest of feathers on the back. The bright red beak and long neck feathers contribute to these ducks' splendid appearance. They are used to the steady stream of visitors and have no fears about paddling near the shore or dozing off on a rock in the warm afternoon sun. A grackle finds some leftover bread on the shore. People feed the geese and ducks, but much food is left behind for other birds. A male cardinal is also after a morsel. I'm sitting on a park bench, and all of this wildlife is happening before my eyes. I could spend the whole day here watching the birds and talking with the locals. A gray squirrel gets a drink from the pond edge before scampering off to the nearby shrubs. Along the Blue Ridge Parkway, I searched for new types of salamanders. In a mountainous stream, I found this dusky salamander. It looks like its tail was lost in the past and has since regenerated. There are many of these salamanders residing throughout this area. Notice how well it blends in with the rocky stream. When I find my other tapes, you'll see some full-grown duskies. This one is still relatively small and young.
North Carolina is not only famous for its natural habitats and wildlife, it's also loaded with historical sites. One of my favorites that I encountered was the Biltmore Estates.
I toured the largest private home in America, the Biltmore Estate. At first, I was hesitant to purchase a ticket because the price was $38. And I thought, a house is a house. Why spend $38 to see a big one? But I'm glad I splurged, because this house is like none other in the world. Unfortunately, cameras were not allowed inside the house because everything is privately owned and copyrighted. The Biltmore Estate was the home of George Vanderbilt, the grandson of the railroad tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt. George was born into a family of enormous wealth and used his share of the money to build this large estate. The house has 250 rooms, with an indoor swimming pool, gymnasium, 65 fireplaces, library, canning rooms, servants' quarters, and much more. Biltmore was intended to be a self-sufficient estate, complete with a working farm, vineyard, and winery. The gardens and greenhouse are immaculate. All sorts of tropical plants grow in the greenhouses, and the flower gardens outside contain thousands of flowering plants. Rows upon rows of tulips blossom in April. The Blue Ridge Mountains provide a gorgeous background behind the mansion, and for those touring the gardens. Much wildlife dwells here. Throughout the year, naturalists lead tours around the estate and inform visitors about the diversity of plant and animal life found inside the property. Here we have a mockingbird perched on a limb. We all remember Harper Lee's famous story, "It's a sin to kill a mockingbird." Here's the million-dollar question. Why is it a sin to kill a mockingbird? What is the historic or mythological significance of that title? Or maybe there is none. Mockingbirds sing beautiful songs and can mimic other birds. Sometimes they even sing at night. It would not be right to harm such a lovely bird. This sparrow appears to be eating small insects in the grass. It might be eating grass seed. It's difficult to see, although it could be looking for dry grass to use for constructing a nest. One thing is for certain, this little sparrow sure looks nice out here on a warm spring day. I found a beautiful swampy area near the NC Nature Preserve. This is not part of the preserve, but a lot more natural wildlife can be found here, in this unmanaged section of wilderness. And here comes a muskrat. I'm not able to get any closer because of the deep mud, but as long as I remain still, he'll go about his business. Muskrats have poor vision and cannot see unless you are thrashing about.
The goal of my North Carolina expedition was to find the Hellbender, the largest salamander in North America. They can grow up to 30 inches in length. Unfortunately, I was unable to find one in the wild. Every fisherman that I talked to mentioned how many salamanders they killed every time they saw one.
The Davidson River has clear water, a rocky bottom, and a swift-moving current. This is the perfect environment for North America's largest salamander, the Hellbender. I spent hours in the river turning over stones, straining my eyes through the water's surface, trying to spot any sign of this mysterious amphibian. Crayfish and bottom-feeding suckerfish were uncovered. These fish are remarkably colorful, considering their place on the river bottom. They blend in well with the rocks. Everything is camouflaged. Under one rock, we've discovered a clutch of white eggs. I'm not 100% sure if these are Hellbender eggs, but certain aspects of them fit the description. Females lay eggs under rocks, but the eggs are often guarded by males. One article stated that the eggs are the size of ping pong balls, while another photograph showed white eggs the same size as these. I'll have to send this photo to a scientist in North Carolina and ask for a direct answer. Unfortunately, we didn't find a Hellbender in the wild this time, but the NC Nature Center has one on display. The Hellbender has a large fold of skin that increases its body's surface area, aiding in respiration. They absorb oxygen through their skin. Hellbender's staple food is crayfish and occasionally small fish. It's sad that so many fishermen kill these creatures because of the false belief that they are a threat to their trout. I recently learned that Hellbender habitat stretches all the way to western New York. That's good news. Now I won't have to drive all the way to North Carolina to find one. I found a clutch of toad eggs. These are from the eastern American toad, the same species commonly found in Connecticut. After a few days, the eggs have turned into hundreds of tiny tadpoles. Soon they'll morph into complete toads. My favorite shot from the river is inside a small pool of water. Thousands of wood frog tadpoles are waiting to become frogs. With my underwater camera, I'm right inside the pool with the tadpoles. For the next few minutes, I have to just watch as the tadpoles dance across the camera lens. I hope you enjoy Life in a Bubble, the world of the tadpole. While in Asheville, North Carolina, I stayed with friends that have a pet python. It was feeding time, and I never saw a constrictor at work before. This may be a little gruesome, but this is what happens. The snake's name is Larry, and he's now suffocating his meal, a large white rat. The process is slow, and Larry remains constricted around his prey for quite a while. At one point, I actually heard the bones of the rat fracturing. It was upsetting, but this is nature at work. As observers, we must study all aspects of the natural world. When Larry is finally ready to eat, he dislocates his jaw and stretches his mouth around the rat. Larry has a series of teeth-like structures in the back of his throat that help push his prey into his stomach. After Larry has eaten, he will not need another meal for about 5 or 6 months. I took a trip to Nashville, Tennessee, and toured the Hermitage, President Andrew Jackson's estate. These cabins were slave quarters, but Jackson himself was born and lived in these small structures before he rose to prestige. Now here's something you don't see every day, a donkey. These beasts of burden are actually quite intelligent, one of the reasons they can be so stubborn. Back in Jackson's time, donkeys like this one were used on the estate for work purposes. Today this donkey resides in a large pen for visitors to look at. Durham, NC, I'm exploring the Eno River with some friends. A water snake swims upstream on a hot day. He makes his way to a rock, and from this angle appears to be watching the humans as they splash about in the river. Notice the colorful markings on the snake's skin. As my trip comes to a close and I get ever closer to Connecticut, I make a quick stop at George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. Dear George, forever will you be an inspiration to our country. If we ever lose sight of you, our country will too be lost.
Upon my return to Connecticut, I investigated a beaver habitat in a top-secret location.
I'm at a top-secret location observing beaver activity. The sun is setting, and I don't have much time before the light level is too low for my camera. A large beaver is on the shore, gnawing some tree bark. The beaver returns to the water and swims towards me, investigating what I'm up to. Beavers have much better vision than their relatives the muskrat. As a warning, beavers smack their tails on the water's surface to intimidate intruders. There are 2 beavers here tonight. We'll be back soon to get better footage.
The natural schedule in North Carolina is about 2 weeks ahead of ours in Connecticut. Upon my return, our birds were just hatching, while down there fledglings were already active.
We're looking at a family of Chickadee chicks that recently hatched out of their eggs. These chicks live inside a birdhouse on the deck of my house. They are blind and featherless now, but grow rapidly. This egg is in another compartment of the birdhouse and did not hatch. Notice how small the egg is. It's only about half the size of the last segment on your pinky finger. We'll monitor these chicks as they continue to grow. The toads in Connecticut are just beginning their mating rituals. Remember, in North Carolina, the tadpoles have already hatched. Everything is delayed up here because of our colder climate. Notice when the male trills, he closes his nostrils, creating the pressure needed to direct the air into his vocal sac. I've been observing toads for a long time, but I've never noticed this detail until this year.
Well, friends, we've come to the end of this week's episode. I'm Will Michael, and you've been watching Connecticut Naturalist. Stay tuned in the weeks ahead as I recover the lost tape and we take a look at the whole North Carolina road trip in its entirety. Until next time, thanks for watching, and here comes another animal music video.
Oh, Fiona, how I love thee. Cutest frog I've ever seen. I would sing a million songs each night just to have you near. If I had money, I'd buy a diamond ring. The only gift I have is a water lily flower. Each night I fantasize a picnic would be nice, eating dams of flies in a swampy cove with you. Oh, Fiona, how I love thee. Cutest frog I've ever seen. I would leap through lychee methane mud just to be with you. The crickets creak soft, the full moonlight is pale. The smell of honeysuckle fills the warm night air. Let's take the birds out, we'll hide in the cattails. Tell me the secrets that you would not tell the toad. Perfect yellow smile in tender webby toes. Greenest skin I've ever seen, it's olive when she's tan. Ever there's a drought, the pond is drying out. I would give my mud supply to her. Oh, Fiona, how I love thee. Cutest frog I've ever seen. I would sing songs each night just to have you near. Oh, Fiona,
This is Alfonso Raccoon, reminding you to stay tuned to Connecticut Naturalist as we continue to explore wildlife in the weeks ahead. Thank you and good night.